that we have this saying, by filmmakers for filmmakers. And what that really means is that those filmmakers decide entirely the program that we have at this year's SLAMDANCE.
I would say on some level that this process makes me exceedingly uncomfortable. You know, the staged and the forceful nature of this is uncomfortable for me.
And you think that that's how you make a documentary?
I understand completely, but I'm not the one that came up with the idea to do a documentary on me.
Regular Austin has some anxiety. I don't like being around people, and I don't take care of myself very well.
So if I seem miserable, it's because I am extremely miserable.
I work from home. I don't go out. I don't have that many friends.
He's an extremely private person, which is indicative of his music.
My music is distinctly inaccessible.
It has a 20s noir, almost Great Depression vibe to his thing that gives it his style.
I think my sound is just happenstance. Through some sort of serendipity, you end up being flawed in the right ways, and that sort of becomes your style.
Have I told you what's going on with my ear in the last week? My ear started bleeding, and I don't mean like a little bit.
Do you know what's causing the bleeding at all?
No, I have no clue, which is scary as hell.
It was a cholesteatoma, and mine had gotten so bad that it had destroyed my ear, and I'll have to get surgery. I'm worried I won't be able to hear again, and I have a lot of things I want to be doing musically right now.
I'm no longer working against the deadlines of my contract. I'm now working against the deadline of my surgery.
How do you stay positive?
Do I?
You mean you never heard? You mean you never heard?
What are you gonna do until you die? You're filling time in this really with this really terrible idea.
Come on back home, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. I just can't wait.
I kind of want to start with your relationship, you know, because this is about two friends really getting together and, you know, one friend highlighting another friend. I mean, Zach, you've done music videos with Larange together. You guys have collaborated before this. And so you guys grew up together? Is that how it started? Where was the relationship beginning?
Well, so I've been a film editor my whole life, and I was I want to say 14 or 15 when I went to
14.
14 when I went to an arts summer camp in North Carolina for film editing. It sort of covered a lot of different arts disciplines, but I was there for film editing, and across the hall in the dorms, I met Larange, who was there for. Were you there for bass for the orchestra or no?
No, I was there for acting.
Oh wow. Well, all the disciplines didn't really intersect. So.
It was like a summer camp, but it was like a accredited summer camp that like contributed to like high school credits.
Yeah.
And so it was there. So I had gone because I had won some awards in high school for acting, and so then I kind of just pushed that into getting accepted into the summer camp because I had to like apply and do all these things. But yeah. I did not like anyone in the acting department, and it was probably the single event that made me completely bail on acting, because I really didn't enjoy the personalities, but what I did enjoy was the film people, and Zach was one of those.
That's one of them. Yeah, I mean, we kind of hit it off right away. We were like across the hall from each other in the dorms, and I think we both have very dark senses of humor. So we kind of hit it off on that, and we had similar taste in music and movies and comedy and stuff. And so we just kind of stayed in contact after the camp, and she caught up on the phone all the time, and would occasionally come out to meet each other. I lived in Maryland and he was in North Carolina, so it's not that long a drive. It's only like 4 or 5 hours. Nearly right away, I started feeling like this guy is documentary worthy, like nearly from the jump. It just seemed like a personality. Like I grew up watching a lot of weird documentaries like American Movie or King of Kong, and feel like he's a similar kind of personality, a guy who just like was going to do what he was going to do no matter what, and very driven and motivated. And yeah, I don't know. So I started very early on kind of bugging him about the idea of doing a film about him.
I want to know, Zach, from you, was the idea because he's your friend consciously early on to put yourself in the movie?
Yeah.
Part of that was that an idea, or did that just happen and happenstance and you decided to keep it?
Well, so Laurent is shaking his head because I really fought it for a long time. I mean, I'm a film editor, like I'm not a director by trade, and this is a big leap for me. So I learned a lot over the course of this film, but for a long time, the intention was that I would not be in it at all. You wouldn't even hear my voice. There were multiple cuts done with that intention, and it just didn't work. And I think probably one of the more successful aspects of the film is just our interplay and you kind of getting a sense of our relationship. As it went on, I think I could speak for Laurent in saying that this was like put upon him. It wasn't his idea to make a documentary, and so he was uncomfortable with the camera in his face for some of the things we were trying to shoot, especially this, around the surgery and some of the performance-based stuff. And so as it went on and we went into some of the more medical elements of the story, it just became impossible not to put me in it, because the meta nature of him arguing with me while I was trying to get something on camera, or just the way we were talking. It just seemed like, it also seemed to me like one of the more interesting aspects of his life in that moment was that we were there filming him. It felt like it would almost be disingenuous not to reveal that side of it in some way, because if we weren't there, he would have just been a guy in his house making music all day and nobody would have seen anything. So would have been fine for you? Is that what you're sounds good?
I'm a professional musician. People would have heard the music.
Yeah, I just so it became a situation.
You say that like I'm on like an island, just like sitting there making music with seashells.
Well, we wouldn't have seen the music that you made that day were there not a camera in your face.
So the truth is that when he first started this documentary, after like 3 or 4 times where they came down and they were filming us, one of the very first and only notes I ever gave Zach was, this movie does not make sense unless you're in it.
Yeah.
I told him that like on day 2.
Yeah.
And because I think it was more clear to me as the subject watching how this was going. And like, there's too much context of our relationship in terms of how I am rejecting the concept of this documentary.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, I mean, again, I haven't seen the movie, right?
Yeah.
But I can just tell you just from being there that if I'm my tone in terms of my willingness to be a part of this doesn't make any sense unless there is a person on the other end of that camera. Like, other than that, if you don't have that, then I'm just being like, some weirdly indignant like subject of a documentary.
This is going very well.
Good.
I'm pleased.
Don't tell me to not tell stories.
Well, I didn't want to hear the goddamn balloon quiz story.
Well, where did it go? Where'd it go? Good lesson in terms.
I want to. I really like.
Yeah, maybe just trust me to get to the point.
I have no regrets over how we're filming this documentary.
Yeah, because you get to edit it together to make it seem like I'm saying shit I'm not. By the way, I'm not dying from this ear surgery. I'm not dying from the ear surgery. The stakes aren't that high.
The problem for a long time was in cuts where I was just trying to, I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to be on camera. Like in cuts where I was just trying to remove myself entirely. it just seemed like, why is this guy being such a jerk to the director, or why is he
Yeah.
so unwilling?
You know what the big irony of that is that Zach's unwillingness to include himself in the documentary was the actual conceit of the documentary, and like that was the real self-indulgent thing, is to not include himself.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the subject, but it turned out to be our relationship, and the act of making the movie turned out to be kind of a story.
Was it weird for you, Laurent, not to have the camera around after he was done?
No,
you were good. You got rid of it. Got rid of that anxiety right away.
yeah, it reminded me a lot of just living my life like I would prefer to live.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not have to, like, it's like I grew up a lot going to therapy and psychologists a lot when I was a kid, because I was weirdly, very depressed from like a super early age, which is kind of unusual. And so they sent me to a lot of these places. But one thing that I became kind of obsessed with, in my like early teenage years as a result of this, was I kept thinking about this idea of observing yourself, right? And then having to sort of conjure these symptoms in that situation where somebody is observing you, trying to explain yourself observing yourself, but I'm not going through the thing right now. I'm telling you about yesterday when I was going through the thing. So like, do I have to show that now? Do I show you that I'm like, is this an acting thing, or is this just, do I just need to be able to describe this in detail?
Yeah.
And it reminded me an awful lot of that, because it was sort of this like Ouroboros sort of psychology of me, like, feeling a responsibility to be able to present myself as myself in a way that I would do normally on any day. And so, yeah, when it ended, I probably just was more myself than when the cameras were there. So,
yeah.
Is it fair to say Zach would have been the only person you would have given this access to?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And honestly, he really did fight me for years on this. Like, the weird part of this time frame is that he was fighting me to do a documentary on me for years before this ear surgery.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that from what I've seen of the marketing, because I haven't seen the movie, I'm assuming that the ear thing is a pretty crucial part of this. But it is kind of interesting that was not. I mean, I don't know what the original intention was, to be honest with you, but it wasn't deafness.
Yeah, it was interesting happenstance that we kind of ended up with a 3-act structure out of this.
Yeah,
because it really wasn't supposed to be that kind of a project at all.
You're pretty used to that, though, working in documentaries, I would assume, because that more than anybody that the documentary really takes shape in the edit.
Totally. Yeah. And I'm, working on some of the docs that I have in the past, I'm very used to like us sort of changing gears halfway through the process, and it becoming a different type of film. So
capture when you capture the happenstance, like you said, it's like you gotta run with it and see where it goes, right?
Well, that was the thing about trying to cut me out of it. It was just like it just didn't work. It's like you lean into what's naturally working and what you naturally captured.
Yeah. I'm wondering for you too, is it different doing a documentary with somebody you really know, personal? Was it a different experience for you, or did you approach it the same way you would approach any documentary that you've done?
Well, for me, God, yes. Yeah. I mean, it was very different, and it was difficult. Like, this is like the hardest thing I've ever done by far. And a lot of that was just the edit. And, like as an editor, that's the part I enjoy, and that's the part I look forward to and feel comfortable in. Mm-hmm. And suddenly on this, it was like everything was thrown out the window. I was second guessing decisions I was making, and I was finding it I had a lot of pressure about, I had asked one of my best friends to make a film about his life, and ostensibly it should represent his whole life or his whole something. I wanted it to feel like a representative that was worthy of this guy that I've known for so long and care about. But when the ear trouble started, it felt to me like I could kind of do a lot of that through the lens of what he was going through in the immediate, time period we were filming in. Like this short window into his life, we could take sidetracks and sort of learn more about different avenues of his life that we wanted to through exactly what he was dealing with in that moment. But man, yeah, the pressure was crazy just to feel like I was living up to this opportunity and that I wasn't, letting anyone down.
Nice. Laurent, you've always been kind of in the fringes on the underground of the music scene, and I'm kind of curious from your perspective, how has it changed and evolved over the years for you as people start to recognize who you are and what you do, and people are asking to collaborate with you? Do you feel like there's a different sense to music, or is it just always the creative process is the creative process, and I'm going to stick with that and stay that way?
My relationship with music has definitely changed over time because everything does,
Right.
And anything that you love is going to end up resembling love more than it's going to resemble anything else. And so, like if I, was a carpenter, I would probably hate stairs too. But like music is kind of like there's a give and take for what you get from it, and the reasons that you stay with it are not the same reasons that you started. My creative process though has not changed in that I do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
And so I just chase whatever is inspiring me, and that really is rooted in the fact that I'm probably not a very good musician, to be honest with you, because and that's not me trying to be self-deprecating or humble. That's me explaining my creative process. I mean, to be honest, I have very little interest in like musicianship. Creativity is the only thing that's really ever mattered to me, and that's why I wasn't a musician when I was starting out. I was a writer, or I was an actor, or I was I paint, and like and just being, that's probably the only thing I'm really decent at, is just being sort of vaguely creative. So yeah, no, my creative process has not changed in that, I'm still.
I'm wondering if did you garner any respect for Zach's creative process in this process? Did you feel like you learned something through doing this with him?
I love this question.
No. No, he fell into a lot of the same traps that I've seen, that I've fallen into. I mean, to be honest, it reminds me a lot more of when I work with musicians that are newer. Which the irony is that Zach is more experienced at what he does than literally any other person I know in anything creative. So when it comes to editing, I don't know any human that is as dedicated to their craft for as long as they've been doing it than Zach. I mean, really. But like, the only cut I've ever seen of this movie was like almost 2 years ago, and it was bad. I mean, it was bad. Like, I didn't like it. It was very like gentle, and it was very soft, and it made me look very good, and it was very cute. And when he asked for my notes on it, I was like, well, just kind of sucks. Like, it's just like, I don't understand why it made me look so good. Like, because I was there, and it really shouldn't, because I know who I am, and I know how I come off, and a large part of my day-to-day life is trying to account for the way that I know that I come off to people. So if you're making a whole damn documentary on me, I can't imagine that I just say nice things all the time. So it was, so I watched him fall into like getting too many notes, trying to do too much, trying to do everything at once. It's a lot of the stuff that I've done. I mean, it's pretty creative. It's pretty like standard creative pitfalls. But I mean, but again, I haven't seen this final one, so I'll get back to you on I think I have a really, really good benchmark for whatever growth has happened,
What do you feel about that, Zach? I'm like
Well,
playing therapist here all of a sudden.
No, I love it. I mean, I think he's right. I mean, a lot of what I'm describing about like this version of this film where I was trying to sort of hide the things that worked about it, it was just unsuccessful. It was me trying to put like a square peg in a round hole a little bit. And I think it was also a little bit vanity. Like I didn't intend to be in the film, so I don't have any footage of me in the film where I like look good, sound smart. Like I feel like I come across very authentically a filmmaker who flew from Los Angeles to Nashville and is, didn't sleep and is doing some interviews now. But like I think it comes across as more real, and I definitely agree with his notes at that time. It was also this thing of feeling pressure to, I don't want to make a movie that just says my friend is an asshole. And I think there was a level of leaning into what was real that I needed to come to terms with.
I'm curious, Zach. I wonder if you learned anything different about Larange that you didn't know going into this that you carry with you. If you mind sharing that with us.
Learn something different about him. I mean, I feel like I learned a lot. I think that was one of the more interesting parts of the project for me was I took this guy who I'd known for probably when we started like 15 years, at this point, nearly 2 decades. And I felt like there were a lot of things that I uncovered that I didn't know before. I think, they're subjective. You have to be me and know what I knew before and know what I knew now.
Sure.
But as a person, I was pleasantly surprised to find that, there was no bullshit when we turned the cameras on. There was no version that he was trying to portray, or he just really is who he is. And so that was nice to see that there was no like ego to this at all. If anything, he was upset we were in his house with the camera. There was certainly no like trying to use this to market himself or anything like that. It was a really honest process. And so I was not surprised because I know him, but I was happy to see that. Sure.
Check. 1, 2. Yes, I was sad as a child. Good question, Zach. If I was going to name this, it would be Larange is nothing and also a lot. Because I think it summarizes both my experience as a person, as an artist, and what a bad idea this documentary was.
I am curious your thoughts, Larange, on what you love about making independent music.
I like being able to find an audience for the things that inspire me.
Nice.
And in that way, independent music has been the avenue for that. But to be honest, I think I would have better context after I do a major label music, and then I'll get back to you on the.
Zach, what do you love about making independent film?
Well, I love that I get to work a lot. I'm lucky to get to work on a lot of streaming documentaries these days. Yeah. And I love doing that, working on projects for Netflix and Amazon stuff. But they come with a lot of cooks in the kitchen and with a lot of voices in your head while you're making them. And there is something wonderful about just getting the reins yourself and getting to make something that feels more authentic and that you're passionate about. And there is something wonderful about not having notes and, for your notes to come from you and from your immediate friends and collaborators and people that you really feel are valid to give you a note or whatever. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of passion and heartbreak behind independent film, but there's also like a real feeling of victory when you succeed, because you're it's a lonely thing to do. You're really by yourself or with a small group of people for a long time.